Hey everybody, it's Andre. New episode of the ConunDRUM podcast is up. When I started this idea, I thought I would get in contact with lots of different people from the music community. The first few episodes were with drummers, just because I'm a drummer and that's kind of the easy thing to get things rolling. So I decided to this time around do a non-drummer, and so for the first non-drummer, I went with my oldest friend and bandmate, Jack Bowie. Jack is the first guest that is a non-drummer on the podcast. We have a pretty good chat. What's in the podcast is only a small amount of what we talked about. We talked for a longer time than what's in the episode. So definitely a part two will be made with Jack. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and I'm going to link... Well, I guess I would be linking the Six Gun Smoke stuff because that's the main project that we work on together. So anyway, his socials will be there so you can check him out. He also does solo shows, acoustic stuff, and we have a side project, he and I, called Rusty Rake. So anyway, we have a good chat about how we met way back when we were just kids, the scene, how we grew up, where his music influences come from, and all that. So hope you enjoy the podcast. I don't want to keep talking here because there's a lot that Jack and I talk about. Anyway, cheers.
Yeah, this is weird because I can't hear you at all now.
I can hear you.
Back here. Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Now.
Yes. So where'd you go? There
I
you
just
go.
did that to see if it would change the...
Yeah, no. There you are, Jack Bowie. What's up?
This is it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's kind of this is the first guest that I'm having on the podcast that I've known since I was like, I don't know, what was it, 13, 14 we met? Something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty much my whole life almost. And you're the first six gunner on the podcast, so there's that.
That's true.
Yeah. So,
the non-drum six gunner.
yeah. And the first non-drummer on the podcast as well. There, you got lots of firsts there, Bowie.
Thanks, I think.
We'll see how this goes. This
Yeah.
could be a fucking shit show. And
Probably will be.
that's usually what we do. So I know quite a few things about you because I've grown up with you, but for the sake of the podcast, we'll take a little trip down Jack Bowie memory lane a little bit here.
Okay.
So where do you come from, my good buddy?
I am Miramichi born and raised, Newcastle side. If you want to go back, back then,
Yeah.
I guess that's what it would have been.
Yeah.
Most of my adventures were in Chatham, I would dare to say.
That's where the action happened.
That's where a lot of the action happened. And yeah, I don't know. I guess just life kept me here, so I stayed. Lived in Moncton briefly in 2000. Been in and around the Miramichi area though most of my life.
Yeah, same. I mean, I grew up here. When I was young, we moved to like Murray Settlement, like just outside of Rogersville for like a couple of years when I was like, I don't know, grade 2, I think. And then from grade 3 until I finished school and went to college, it was in Newcastle and Chatham. And then moved to St. John for a couple of years and then moved back here. So pretty much same idea. So in Miramichi, Newcastle area, was it always in that house that we used to have our jams in?
It was. I mean, we in fact, actually, until I was 6, I lived in Oak Point, and my parents had moved to town, and they had bought in that house, and okay. I was there till.
Which was a convenience store, was it not?
It was. It was called Croft Superette at the time, and okay. My dad. He was not well at the time, so he was off work. So he decided to get some income, I guess was the theory.
Yeah.
And but there was a lot of memories made in that store, and he was quite the entrepreneur. like the first time I ever watched Beetlejuice was because we rented it from my own store.
Nice.
And same with Back to the Future. So he got into the movie game a little bit, and there was a lot of like teenagers that lived in the area. But the coolest thing he got into was video games. I don't know how this came about.
I was gonna ask, like, you had the old NES cartridges and stuff.
He had those for a little bit, but I'm talking like the full stand-up arcade games, and the two games that, like, I don't know, coined it, I guess, if you will. He had Operation Wolf. I don't know if you remember that game with the gun. He had that one in, but the money maker was Double Dragon.
Oh,
like Friday night and Saturday night, there would be like 10 high school kids around that machine and just pumping quarters to it. It was
well, that was a hot game at the Star Palace at the in the mall, the arcade that was at the mall. There was Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2 and Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, NBA Jam, like throws a brick. Like those games were just like
classics. But the Double Dragon one was just, it always stuck out to me because it was just, I just never seen anything like it. Like, I mean, I was quite a bit younger than the other kids, so I wasn't really playing it, but just I would kind of stand back, and I think I even had a little chair. I would like stand up so I could see the screen. But parents supporting the violence, watching video games. What can I say?
So you weren't 6 feet tall back then?
No, I was not 6 feet tall back then. But
did you know that I used to live on that street when we first moved from Murray Settlement? We lived on that street for I think it was a year and a half or 2 years before we bought the house on McKay. I was next door neighbors.
For some reason, I think I did know that.
My neighbor was the Richards, Kevin.
Okay, I think I did know that. I think Kevin might have told me that more than you did, which was strange.
Yeah,
but okay.
Yeah,
little Lock Street connection.
Little Lock Street connection. Yeah. So we were like
with an E.
Locky. Yeah, I always called it Lock Street. And I remember somebody was like, "Oh, you live on Locky Street." I was like, "Where's that?" Locky.
Anyway, no, and we don't use a knife.
No, we don't.
There you go.
So what was your first so you were in that house for quite a lot of years then. So what was your first musical memories growing up as a kid? Like, was it always playing in your house? Because I know your dad was a classic rocker.
He was a classic rocker. Like,
so get into that.
Okay, so I don't know. I mean, I guess Matt and John played music, and John and Dale played music, and they were a little older than me, so I kind of looked up to them, and they were learning instruments. So I was like, I think I want to learn too. But then some people from school were kind of wanting to learn, but so there was that kind of the instrument aspect of it. But before that, you're right, my father was always into the classic rock music. Saturday was a wash the white walls, clean the rims, and listen to Lynyrd Skynyrd outside with the doors blared, open in the vehicle. And it was like, I learned, I played a lot of hockey growing up. So where I learned most of it was, the rule was we listened to his music one way and my music the next way, like the other way.
Yeah, okay.
So, but I mean, clearly, when 91 hit, Nirvana came out, that was really big for me. That was kind of like, I want to do that. Like, that sounds pretty, like, I like that. And, but the big moment for me was, I remember not knowing what records were. It was about 7 or 8, and I didn't know what they were. And I asked Dad, I was like, what's this machine, and what are these things? And so anyway, he showed me, and the first thing he ever played for me, the first anything I've ever heard on vinyl, because it was always cassettes and the other stuff, because the car and stuff. But the first thing he's ever played for me on vinyl was War Pigs by Black Sabbath, and he cranked it, and I was like, what a life changer. I was like, what is this? Like,
life-changing moment.
So look, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. So that was kind of like the first, like, I'm a music fan now moment. Okay. And I think for him, it was kind of the first, like, my son likes music. and I asked him to teach me how to put on the records. And I remember like he had Van Halen 84. Like the first time I heard Panama and Voodoo Child and like, you know, the whole Paranoid album was because my dad had those records. He taught me how to use them. And I just went in blind. I was just like, this album looks cool. And I put it on. So he had that side, you know, and then I had the Nirvana with kind of my friends. And then but the other one that really spoke to me was he had Heart of Gold. He had Neil Young Heart of Gold. And, you know, so I still have his copy, like the original.
No way.
Yeah. And Matt Bowie had it, and he had given it to me as a wedding present. And nice. I love it, but it's like an original copy when it came out. So it's like not just like a Heart of Gold he bought like after the fact. Like when Heart of Gold came out, he got it on vinyl, and that's the copy that I have. So
never let that go.
No. Like, so, but needless to say, those albums were all, you know, I was just, that's what made me want to play music, was just, it was just so cool. Like, it was just so cool to listen to that stuff. And at the same time, like, you know, a lot of my friends, I kind of had two groups of friends. I had my music friends and I had my hockey friends, and my hockey friends weren't into that stuff as much. Yeah. But, you know, there were some common bonds, but that was probably just weekend after weekend of never ending, you know, listening to Cream and Doobie Brothers and Skinnerd and oh my God, there were so many to name, like, you know, and just everything I know about classic rock, I learned out of my dad's car stereo or his vinyl collection, basically.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, yeah.
That's great, man. Your dad was such a cool cat. Like, I remember, the first time I didn't realize that I would have met him. It would have been at the store, like when I was living there. But like later on, when I started going to your place, because that's where we either jammed at your place or my place when we were in our early bands, which we'll get into that a little bit later. But like, I remember we were all setting up, and it was, you know, hi, Mr. Bowie, hi, Mrs. Bowie kind of thing. Like, didn't know anybody, you know, and we started playing, and your dad just stood there over by the staircase and just watched us do our thing. And the smile he had on his face.
Oh yeah, he loved
the music, and we were, I mean, fucking kids. So the noise that must have been coming out of what we were doing must have been just like fucking atrocious. But he was just grinning ear to ear. Like, it must have been a proud moment for him to see his kid strapping on a guitar. And because you were always playing those cheesy licks. So I guarantee you were playing some of those things mid practice. So he would have been hearing like rock and roll, hoochie coo.
Yeah.
Fucking, you're always pulling that lick out. Like,
yeah,
I mean, so
that's true.
Yeah. So that's where that all comes from. That makes sense now.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to me, like I mean, that's exactly where it comes from. But the other cool thing that subconsciously it taught me that I didn't know it was going to teach me was when we would get like a Hip Parader magazine. Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, you know, because of course, you know, the musical taste develop, and I would buy it for Nirvana coverage when it was in there. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you'd see, like, you know, you learn about Pantera or whomever in these Hip Parader magazines. And sometimes they refer back to Jimi Hendrix. Yeah. And I always just thought it was cool that I felt like, so like, yeah, I know who that is. You know what I mean? Like, and you know, I was like 10 or so, but it was just like
a picture of Steve Perry. You're like, I know who that guy is.
Well, yeah, like just to have the knowledge to have learned it on my own, or have learned it from somebody that loved it as much. Mm-hmm. It meant a lot, but I just thought it was cool, like, you know, and I remember this was kind of a funny story, because the one band that really spoke to me out of all those albums was Cream. Like, I just thought, like, they were, you know, first off, it was Clapton. So Clapton was like, you know, you're starting to learn guitar, and Clapton's name is up there. Mm-hmm.
So I never got into Cream, even though like Ginger Baker is like considered one of the best drummers of all time. I've never gotten into Cream.
Yeah, I don't know what it was about them, and they were different though. They were really unique sounding, and they kind of had the blues undertone, but they were so kind of out there, and like some of the old like, you know, they had the hippie colors and like that whole, I don't know, you'd be watching a video and they'd have the old like Austin Powers twirl thing on the screen and all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty hippie stuff.
Yeah.
But then it'd be like a wah solo under like, you know, a great blues guitar scale. It was just like, I don't know. Anyway, they just really spoke to me, and that would be the band that I would be like, you know, I'd be sitting around with my friends, and we'd be talking about like Stone Temple Pilots, and I'm like, you know, band you should listen to, like classic rock band is Cream. And they're like, who are the Cream? Who are these guys? Like, I'm like,
well, I mean,
get out of here.
Yeah, but I mean, that's sort of true even now. Like kids that listen to music now don't know who bands like Nirvana and Soundgarden were, like, in that because those are the bands that we came up with, and it just, you know, it's cyclical that way. But good music always sticks around, so they come back around to that. So because there's always those people that kind of, you know, carry the torch for those classic bands like Zeppelin and Beatles and Sabbath. They're still around because of that. So, you know, from the bands from the 80s and the 90s that are worth their weight are still around because people keep bringing them up. You know, kids don't necessarily know who they are now. Like they listen to Billie Eilish or, you know, whoever, but then they come back to those other bands eventually.
There's a reason why they've been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, consistently. You know, whether I'm maybe touring and all that kind of stuff, you could argue with that. It's the same level, but but like musically, Kiss. Audibly, and the recordings are timeless, and then they call it classic rock for a reason. Like it's just never going to go away. Like, you know,
but at what point does, like, because we consider classic rock 60s and 70s, right? So when do they start adding in the 80s and the 90s as we get further away from those decades? Or
you know what? I'm kind of a classic rock snob. I'm a classic rock snob. To me, like 79 after, like, no, it's just, I don't know what it is. I don't know. Like, to listen to Panama and then listen to like American Woman, I'm like, no, it's not classic rock.
Yeah.
Some of it might, and I could be wrong, but it's just, to me, it'll be.
No, I do agree.
To me, it's just a different genre, like not genre, but era. Like it's just a different vibe.
That's exactly what it is. And I do agree with you, because I'll never call the 80s rock or the 90s rock and that stuff classic rock. Like classic rock is by definition that particular era, end of the 60s to the end of the 70s. That's it. That's classic rock.
Burton Cummings is rocking mascara, has half of his t-shirt ripped, then I'll agree that those worlds will jive into classic rock. But until then, break it to me gently.
You can
see what I did there.
That's so bad, and you can keep Burton Cummings. You know how I feel about that cat. Anyway.
Yes, I do.
So what other players influence, like, okay, so we go from the classic rock into like the Nirvana stuff. So that kind of brings us to right around the time when we kind of started, when we crossed paths.
It did. And actually, you know, it's funny because so the first big stepping stone was the classic rock stuff.
Yeah.
And then the next big one was, of course, simultaneously, I guess, is learning at the same time as, you know, my cousins I mentioned earlier and my friends, and Nirvana was the big band, like, you know, for me. Metallica was really big with that Black Album at the time, but although I liked it, Nirvana just, I don't know, spoke to me a little bit more. So that was kind of the route that I went.
There's a rawness to it.
What's that?
There's more of a rawness to it. It felt more real and attainable.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of my friends, actually, they were more Pearl Jam fans than Nirvana fans. And I was more of a Nirvana fan than Pearl Jam, per se. So that happened. And then it's a really kind of strange twist of fate was that I met Frankie Russell.
Oh God, haven't heard that name in a while.
Yes. Well, Frankie and I became really good friends, as you know.
Yeah.
And it actually started because at the time I was cutting lawns, and I don't know how the story went, but anyway, it ended up that I ended up cutting his like father's lawn or stepmom's lawn or something like that. Right. So we met that day. Come to find out, I was just kind of starting to skateboard, and he was just kind of starting to learn guitar. So, and I was, you know, we were kind of reciprocal. Like
Yeah.
I sucked at skateboarding. He was pretty good at guitar.
Still do.
Yes, I still do. But he was really good at skating.
He was a good, yeah. I ran into him down in downtown Newcastle when they built the new Ritchie's Wharf and the library and all those spots where you would, wax the curb and like get a good grind on, for your trucks and your tail slides and all that shit. And I remember skateboarding because there was a cat that I'd met. His grandmother lived across the street from me. He was from Fredericton and he used to skateboard. So I started skateboarding with him. So we went down into town because he was only around for the summers. And that's where I met Frankie. He was just skateboarding or whatever. So then that's when I met Aaron as well, Aaron Young. So there was a whole crew of us skateboarding. So I don't think I met you. First time I met you was at that first band practice.
I'll bring it all the way to that.
So you can fill in the other side of that because like I knew Frankie, a little bit, but it was kind of more like, we'd bump into each other if we were both skateboarding in town and then do a couple tricks, hang out, have a smoke and then go our separate ways kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, Frankie and I, we had so much in common, but it it became he would call around lunchtime and then I would leave and then I'd get home at like 9 o'clock at night. And we didn't know what we would get into.
Oh, no.
But it always involved guitar playing and skateboarding at some level. And his father at the time ran Pizza Hut. So there was always Pizza Hut pizza around. So it was a beautiful relationship. I
think the only thing better would have been is if he would have ran Dixie Lee.
Oh, look at, now you're talking to my heart here. But he gave me one day a mixtape. For those of you young kids that might not know, this was,
predates the playlist.
Exactly. And that was, as much as the classic rock and Nirvana, that kind of made me want to play music and get into music. But even if I never played an instrument, I would probably still be into music based on that.
Yeah.
But that tape made me want to be a guitar player. And it had Lagwagon Duh on one side and No Effects, White Trash, Two Heaps and a Bean on the other side. And I put in No Effects, and the first song on that is Sold Out. And just that
opening riff,
main riff to kick it off, I was like, what mastery is this?
Yeah.
And it was just like, it sounded so different from what I've listened to, and the up tempo, and I could even look past Fat Mike's vocals. Like I could easily look past it because there was so much else going on.
Yeah.
And then it was good. And then I remember listening to it, and my dad poked his head in the door one day and Bob was playing. And he said, that's a cool song. And then he kind of went on his way. And anyway, I listened to that tape. Frankie wanted it back. I would always like, I forgot it. Like, but I didn't. I just wasn't, it just.
Meanwhile, it's literally in the Walkman you're playing right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was that relationship with Frankie and that. And then I started getting away from the Nirvana stuff and kind of going into whatever that was. And then he told me it was punk. He said, that's punk. And I was like, I didn't know but I would hear it on some of the skateboard videos and I was kind of looking for it more. And then, so that was another big moment. And then I wanted to, simultaneously, my cousins in Fredericton were getting into the same stuff.
Yep.
And so that was, we would talk about it, and then it would become if you like that band, then you got to listen to this band, and if you like that band, you got to listen to this band, and like it just snowballed.
Yeah, then you get your hands on a fat comp, and then you're like, I got like 30 bands I got to find now. Yeah, those comps.
Well, when I got my hands, which everybody owned, Survival the Fattest.
Yeah, volume 3.
Was it volume 3 or volume 2? I was thought it was 2.
Volume 3 had little Chuck D's face on the CD.
Yeah, maybe it did.
Yeah.
I think that was Survival of the Fattest, wasn't it?
Survival of the Fattest was the third one because it was Fat Music for Fat People.
Yeah.
There was Fat Volume 2, and then it was Survival.
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, you might be right. Anyway, that was the one.
Yeah.
And So that
That
was it. Like I never went back. Like when I listened to that comp, I listened to it. I remember I listened to it 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And then about 20 minutes after the third time, I was like, okay, well, Propaganda, I got to get that band. Strung Out, I got to get that band. And I was, the Country Roads, the Me First, Me Gimme Gimmes was like the coolest thing in our house. It's all we listened to, my dad included. And so Frankie kind of gave me the first real more modern punk rock stuff. And then I said, oh, geez, I'd like to start a band, or at least playing with people that had common musical.
Yeah. Because that's where... Because I had played in a band with Aaron and a couple of buddies because I went to the French school. You were at MVHS. So I had a buddy that I was in my school switched over to MVHS, right? And he was living in Douglastown, so I'd always go and hang out at his place. And he wanted the whole same thing, like Nirvana and Pearl Jam, Metallica. His brother was like a huge Lars fan. He had a Tama drum kit all set up just like Lars, like almost like a replica kit. A cheaper replica kit, but it was cheap. It was a cheap kit, but it was still like all the pieces were there. So, and this is when I was starting to get into playing drums, right? Richard was his name, the guy that I used to hang out with. And so we started playing in a band together. So we were looking for a bass player, and he, for some reason, I don't know where the connection came from. I think it was Matt Gay, actually. And Matt Gay was like, well, I got a guy that plays bass. So it was me and Richard and Matt Gay and Aaron Young. And so then we started playing, just sucking like hard. And so we played a talent show at the school or whatever. And then we just kind of all went our separate ways. And then Aaron hit me up. He's like, dude, we got to keep playing in a band. I was like, yeah, absolutely. He's like, I know a guy. It's this guy I play against at hockey. He seemed really interested. Lo and behold, that's where you come in. So
that's right.
He's like, okay, we're gonna set up a jam, get the garage. So I set up all the gear in my parents' garage, and then Aaron and I, no, it was just me and Aaron and you, I think, that first day. And so. Me and Aaron are there. Pete McIntosh was there. Pete McIntosh.
Yes.
So the three of us are in the garage, and we're warming up or playing bad music or whatever. And then we hear the car pull up into the driveway. We hear the door shut, and then we hear bang, bang, bang on the garage door. So I hit the garage door opener, and then, it's slowly kind of coming up, and I see.
It was almost like a scene at a crossroads.
It was a fucking scene at a goddamn movie.
Guitar and amp.
So yeah, I see the skate shoes. I'm like, okay. And then I see the white socks. I'm like, okay. Then I see shin. And then I see the low skater boy shorts or whatever. And then I see the amp and the guitar. And I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? So then you come in, you plug in your amp, and you hit your guitar, and that was the day you and I first met, actually, right there. So
it was.
What was it like on the other side of that garage door?
You know what? Like after I knocked, I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I don't know these people.
Yep.
I suck at guitar. I must have cajones on me. But you know what though? At the same time, I don't know, what was I, 13, 14 maybe ish?
I think you would have been, because you're a year or two younger than I am.
Yeah.
So I would have been 15. So yeah, you probably would have been 13 going on 14.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway.
Just babies.
Yeah. So little baby with the high socks comes in, and I plug in that Squire Strat into that Marshall. I don't even think I could tune a guitar back then. Like, I think Aaron taught me that day how to tune. He's like, well, this is how and then I just kind of tried my best to keep doing it. But like, but you know what though? That was just a ton of fun. It was just a ton of fun doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, I wouldn't say it's where I cut the chops, because we didn't really get a lot of gigs or anything like that. But
no, it wasn't. We weren't playing for gigs then.
No, but like it felt like when we were practicing, mm-hmm. like we were practicing with purpose. Yeah. Like, if we played it and it sounded rusty, we would want to kind of do it again. And I'd like to think that everybody in the band had fun,
Oh, yeah.
and we all got along because we all hung out after all the time.
Yeah.
There's a few little drinking escapades there that I got involved in that we'll save for another podcast. But
well, we got time. So,
yeah.
So the sorry, I got some stupid thing come up. All right.
Yeah, no, I saw that too.
All right, cool. So we didn't play for gigs. We were just kind of playing just to learn how to play our instruments because we were all figuring it out. And I think that part of it was the challenge of figuring out those songs. Because I remember White Trash, and at that point, Punk and Drublic had come out. There's a couple other bands that we were really into. Then Rancid, Out Come the Wolves, and then there was some other more hardcore stuff that Aaron and. But like that first iteration with Pete didn't last for very long. I think we played like maybe one gig, maybe. But then when Pete left, because then we brought in Bruce on vocals. Did Bruce come in through you, or was that through Aaron? Because I didn't know anybody. I can't
even remember, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't even remember. I want to say Aaron.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah.
Because
that'll be my final answer.
Okay. So, but then when we got Bruce in to actually sing,
Bruce was a little older than me.
Yeah, I think he was my age. He just lived up the road.
Bruce was older, so I wouldn't have really known him. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Okay. So Bruce came in, and then Pete left shortly after that, and then the four of us. That's when shit got serious. That's when we started actually like, okay, we can play shows. We played at somebody's pit party or field party. I remember we got a gig during an intermission during some not figure skating, but like family skate day at the Civic Center. Do you remember that? The Girlfriends, which was a popular band in the area, but they were classic,
like
bebop-y kind of thing, and
like
then
50s. Yeah.
So then they took a break, and while they were on their break, we got to go up and play their gear. We played Rancid, we played Bob from NoFX, and then at that point we had like a couple of originals. And
I think I did. I came up with these little riffs, and
we had
Bruce put some lyrics.
Yeah, we had I Want to Be a Ramon. And X-Man, I think there was one called that had like a ska riff in it. Put Up or Shut Up. So we were right away, as soon as we started figuring out other people's songs like NoFX and Rancid stuff, you guys started writing riffs, and we started making originals like pretty much off the hop.
We did. And I mean, I think for me, I don't know. I still don't consider myself a good songwriter. I just like creation. And I think, looking back, I think that's what that NoFX and the Lagwagon and the punk scene did for me, is because although technically they were like Nirvana and everybody else, just because nobody knew what it was, and it was so like underground for us, it just felt like this whole other level of creativity. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be creative. And it's probably, looking back, why I was drawn to Nirvana, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's just been a world that I was involved in, and I jumped right in, and I loved it, and I still love it today. Like, I still love it. I think I've grown musically, like with a lot of different genres too. But at the same time, I mean, I was like, 13 writing these riffs that were the starting point of an original song. Yeah.
So we did, then we played a hotel lobby party for Gene. I remember that was an adventure. So I remember that was a little ways out of town. Your dad drove us, all the gear in his car. We were all piled on each other. And then we get to this hotel lobby, we set up, we play our set. We only had like maybe 30 or 40 minutes worth of stuff. So. And then we had to do it again because we were done. We played it, and then they were like, play that I Want to Be a Ramon song.
Not many bands to open and close on the
No,
sheet back then in
no.
the original punk scene.
No, well, we didn't have one. We kind of had to make it, right? We had to kind of, and the thing is there was a lot of like-minded teenagers in our area
True.
that didn't have a scene, so we were trying to build that. And I don't think Miramichi really still has a strong scene presence. I mean, there's quite a bit of musicians from here, like, you know, I mean, there's us, there's Dylan Ryan, there's Terry Whalen, but those are all different genres. Like, we're all completely different genres.
That's true. Yeah, I would say
So,
there's a music scene,
there's a
but
music
there isn't a
scene.
genre scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, not like in other places like in Moncton or in Fredericton, like where you have, you know, you go to the Cavo in Moncton and guaranteed you're going to see either a punk or a hardcore or, you know, a heavy band.
Yeah, that's probably true.
You know, so I remember, who was it that threw up on themselves? Do you remember that at that hotel party?
It wasn't me.
No, he was singing along to "I Want to Be a Ramone," and then he threw up on himself, and then he just kept going.
Yeah,
I can't remember his name now. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Well, I mean, look at
we were just kids. We were
if
kids.
I ever
We were
aspired
drinking
to be a GG or a Fat Mike, it's having somebody throw up on themselves to one of the songs of a riff that I wrote.
There you go.
So that's got to account for something somewhere, I suppose.
Yeah. So I'm guessing. Okay, so if we look at the whole of Jack Bowie, I don't mean your whole. I mean the whole of Jack Bowie. The classic rock, the punk rock, the DIY. So all those different genres kind of mushed them together, because you do have a bit of a unique guitar style where you play rhythm and leads sort of I want to say that you don't do them at the same time, but they kind of flow from one into the other seamlessly.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever sat down to say I'm going to do that. I guess I just try to, when I sit down to write, I guess I just try to write things that are fun to play, that I think might speak to somebody. And to be quite honest with you, back then I probably didn't do that very much, but you know, and a little side note, like I kind of quit for a while, like, you know, life got in the way, and you know, you moved away, and Aaron was gone, and all my friends kind of left off to do other things. So I didn't play guitar very much for a long time, like, you know, at all. And I would probably say from like early 2000s to like 2008, 2009, I didn't really, you know, I didn't really play. I didn't write. I loved music still, but I didn't really play. And then I went back and I kind of forgot how much I love Motorhead. And I realized that a lot of like Lemmy's riffs that's exactly what he's doing. And then when I started peeling back the layers a little bit, I was like, well, wait a minute, you know, Fat Mike's kind of doing that on the bass too. And, you know, why not? Like, why not? So just kind of melted some of their techniques together. And, you know, I'm no martyr or nothing on guitar player. I just kind of, you know, I just do what I do, I guess. And it's probably influenced by those two people, which oddly enough are bass players. But, you know, in theory, but I guess, I suppose I do that. I don't set out to do it. It kind of happens. But I guess for me, why not add a little extra melody if you can afford to do it, and if it helps what you're trying to create? Yeah.
Fair point. I agree. So, I enjoy it. Like that's part of like
all I have to say about that.
That's all I have to say about that. That's a terrible Forrest Gump. Because I find because you come up with the riffs and then like you'll either send me an audio or you'll show them to me and before we kind of start jamming on them. So I kind of get a bit of a free range on the drum parts. You'll generally have an idea of like a tempo kind of a thing. But I do appreciate that, you know, your riff is open to interpretation as far as what I'm going to add to it or what Sean's going to add to it, or, you know, that kind of thing, and then see where the song develops from there. Because usually they're fairly fully formed as far as thematically when you bring them to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thing is that, and as you know, 'cause you've been there many times.
Well, I know, but
I'm not.
other people don't know.
Yeah, I'm not really ever married to the arrangement that I bring to the table, but I guess it's good to come to practice with ideas, because then you could, if I want you to be involved and Sean to be involved, then the reality is I got to have more than just a 4-bar or 8-bar or 12-bar section of a song and be like, that's it. What do you think? Like, so I'm very open to moving things around, and that's why I stall on lyrics quite a bit, because I kind of want you guys to get your hands in the dough, so to speak, before, because I don't want to write a bunch of lyrics down and be like, oh, now I got to do this and change this, and I'm too lazy to come up with drum and bass parts and the song and the lyrics. So I'm going to give you guys a shell, but I think I don't know. I guess in my mind too, I would just think that people would have more fun if everybody's involved. So
yeah,
I try to kind of, be free reign on what you want to do. And like, I'm not even, I tell Sean all the time, like sometimes, and James, when James was with us too, he'd be like, oh, I kind of played it different tonight. And I'd be like, I don't care. Like,
sounded great.
Do what you want up there. And I enjoy having the bass player, either one of the McClaffertys, doing leads all night to how they want to do it. If like what we did on the album sounds great, but at the same time, if they wanted to play it differently every night, I'm like, okay, like, because I just kind of have my parts structured in a way that I got to do what I got to do, and it allows you guys to be a bit of in a jam band, and it takes the pressure off, I guess, of the live show of trying to nail each thing. And that's part of the beauty of the live show, is you can listen to the CD or the link or Bandcamp or the download or whatever you want to call it these days, but you can go and listen to it if you want to hear the note for note. Come see us play, have some fun, watch us do something different, try not to mess up too bad. And that's the beauty of music to me. And that really changed for me, actually, when I sorry, that was bad. When I saw No Effects.
I don't spoke so great.
Yeah, I can spoke. Back in 2000, where they weren't, don't get me wrong, they were really good, but they weren't flawless. But it was part of the attraction. And then and I think that's part of that punk scene, like, where it doesn't, you want to sound good, but that's part of the beauty of it, is you don't quite know what's going to happen. Yeah. And I mean, it's probably in all genres, of course, but punk is, I just think that genre lends itself to that a little bit more.
It's more attitude. Well, punk is all about energy and attitude, right? I was just listening to a podcast recently with Shifty. He had the singer from the Gimmies on, Spike, and they were talking about the early days of the Gimmies, and he said Fat Mike went to Shifty said Fat Mike came to me and he said, the only thing that you got to do is make sure your guitar's in tune. Everything else, you can be as sloppy as you fucking want, but as long as you're in tune, will sound great. And that was it. So it's like,
it's true to this day.
It's true. As long as you're in tune, everything else just kind of works itself out, right? And Smelly said,
oh, that old Gretsch.
Oh God.
That old Gretsch.
How old are the strings on that? Like 10 years old. When was the last time you changed the strings on your guitar, Jack? Be honest.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's part of the sound. Yeah.
Have you ever changed strings on one of those things?
Hey, listen, man, I have to change drum heads, like top, bottom. I can adjust, like, don't talk to me about setting up gear.
Oh gosh. Well, it's funny though, because I thought it was just me. I was like, oh God, I'm so lazy with that. But I saw an interview with Brian Setzer, his tech. Maybe it was one of those on YouTube, one of those rig rundowns. And the tech said that he goes behind Setzer's back and changes his strings. He says Brian wants the oldest strings on his Gretches as he possibly can have. And he said, I go behind his back and change them all the time. So we need to do better. So if you want those strings changed, you're going to have to hire somebody to do it behind my back.
Yeah, we're in that position for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, for sure.
No, but I think when it comes to back to the creation and the, I don't know, two parts at once, I just try to add some melody. I don't coin myself a great singer, so I figured the more melodies behind there, then it kind of masks my insecurities with that. And but at the same time, it's just, if the song lends itself to it, then it lends itself to it. Like when on The Preacher, it's 3 chords. You know, there's no extra layering really on that. But then you listen to Outlaw and there's all kinds of ring outs and octaves and double octaves and all this other kind of stuff. So I just kind of do what I guess I feel like at the time for it. But yeah, you're right. It's all of what we just talked about is why I kind of do that, I guess, subconsciously.
And I mean, we do also have instrumentals in the mix, and that comes from the love of the old spaghetti Western stuff, which I mean, because when we started this project, which is now Six Gun Smoke, it used to be called the DiBiase's. We had the old classic Western font for the logo or whatever, and we were really in a different direction musically. It was sort of more influenced by that old spaghetti Western kind of vibe.
And even a little bit before that, it how it turned out was it was even more of an alt country band. It was like almost like I just kind of like a heavier Willie Nelson kind of thing, that it kind of got away from that, and then I kind of got into that vibe. And it kind of was it was a little bit more alt country, but on the kind of darker spaghetti Western side. And then I guess I just developed into, the punk rock roots, I guess, came out eventually and melted what is Six Gun Smoke, which seems to work. I guess
people
seem to like it.
I think we were jamming out one day, and I think it was just the two of us. So I think Sean was mending from surgery or something like that, and we just kind of started playing some old punk songs, and then that influenced. Then we went to play our originals, and the punk stuff we were just doing kind of influenced how we played them. And then we were like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, let's get back to what we actually grew up with. I mean, back to your roots or whatever. And then kind of shed that other side of the sound. And we're like, this is what we are now.
And I think, it wasn't a resistance against that or anything. I think it was just, that's just the way that it
was kind of like a light bulb that went off. It's like, well, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know, I guess for all the stuff that I'm writing now and how the back part of the debut album worked out, was it just kind of, for the songs we had, it worked, and then for the other ones that we added, it was natural, and it came quickly, and it was just, then we created our vibe and our sound, and that's what we are. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
But I gotta say though, I tried a couple different instruments, and that Gretsch and those old deluxes and DeVilles, that seems to be it's in the comfort zone for this project for sure. Like that seems to be part of why the sound is.
So when you sit down to write a song, do you sit down with the Gretsch in hand, or do you sit does it matter what because I'm guessing what you're playing, what you're hearing as you're coming up with riffs would influence how you're going to write the song?
Not really. Like I don't sit down with the Gretsch and be like, I'm doing this riff because it's only going to work on the Gretsch and that's it, that's all. But what I will say is that when I want to I get it so far developed, and then I kind of put it through the meat grinder, and I run it through, and I play it on the Gretsch and see how it sounds, and get the pedal board out and kind of do the full process. And that's kind of the make or break for me. Sometimes I'll play it and I'll be like, nah. And then other times I'm like, yeah, this is going to be something that I'm going to continue to work on. To be honest with you, the thing I write the most on is I have a 95 Horner acoustic that I got on first sale in Miramichi for $30. And I write more on that than anything.
Okay. So they start off in an
Including
acoustic.
smoke stuff, but
So the riffs
pretty
always start
much.
with an acoustic. Okay.
Pretty much. But again, they're not an acoustic vibe, right? Like I'll play it like the way I would play it on the Gretsch on the acoustic.
Yeah.
But then I just kind of translate to be like, yeah, I think that's in our wheelhouse, and we'll kind of put it through that process. And then if I feel like there's something to it, then I bring it to you guys and see what you think and work on it from there.
Cool. So yeah, we've got about 12 new riffs that we are waiting to have COVID fuck off so we can do that.
Yeah, got some in the hopper. Got some in the hopper. I don't know. I always come up with them, I guess. And the Rusty Rake side project was kind of riffs that I thought were still good, but maybe just not for Six Gun Smoke. That's kind of where I put those aside and work on those a little bit here and there. So I like side projects and stuff like that.
Then there's the stuff that you do solo as well. I mean, I know you do, like, whenever you play like a solo gig kind of thing, you break out those cheesy 80s bad cover songs like Poison and
I do.
What's that song? Turn Around.
Talk Dirty to Me.
Yeah. What's that?
I do that Breaking the Law version. I do quite a bit too. That Judas Priest one.
Yeah.
I don't know. The solo acoustic thing is a fun way for me to get out and stay sharp, I guess. Help my vocals, within reason. But it also allows me to play stuff that I wouldn't kind of sit around at home and play. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I panic because somebody will ask me if I want to play, or I'll book one-off show. And I book it and I'm like, oh, it's like a month away. And then I just kind of do my thing. I work or whatever, take the kids to their activities and whatnot. And then it's like Saturday at 4:00. And I'm like, I'll take out the set list. I'm like, oh my God, there's 70 songs here and I don't remember any of these lyrics.
Yep.
So I kind of have a little bit of a panic attack before every gig. And then I'm literally on Spotify with my earbuds walking around the house, trying to make a set list. I'm like, okay, well, I think I know that song. So, and then I listen to the venue and then nobody shows up and then I don't have to worry about it because there's nobody there to hear me. So
yeah, those days of
that worked for nothing.
Those days of 3 or 4 sets, 60 songs, 4-hour nights, I don't know how. I can't
believe we used to do that.
We used to
for
do
you
that.
Folks watching, the DiBiase's literally used to do that. We would play a local bar in Miramichi, and we would start at 10 and end at 2. Mm-hmm. And we literally, Sean Dre and I, would have probably three sets of 50 minutes worth of material. We'd take maybe even a little bit more.
We'd take a break and a half. We'd take one break, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. And then we'd take a quick break to go grab a beer and a piss and then get back on and play at the end of the night.
So that means one of two things. You guys will be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys did that. Or how the hell are you guys not way better than you are?
Yeah, no.
It's probably option number 2. We probably should be better for all that. But
yeah. Well, like you, I took a long hiatus after that initial band broke up. I went off to college and then moved to St. John, started a family, and then moved back here. And then I moved back, and you were doing the Jack Frost and Bongo Boy project. So you Dale,
that's right.
You, Dale, and your brother, and you went at the D-Town pub in the basement. I remember showing up to that, and you it's kind of double takes, fuck, that's Dre.
Yeah. Well, that kind of started because Dale was just kind of why don't we get together and jam? I'm like, yeah, okay. And it's musically somebody I always kind of looked up to, and so we got together and we started playing. It was kind of fun. And then my brother said, well, I can come down and my brother played drums a little bit. So he was like, yeah. And then, he could keep some rhythm and it just worked. And
it's a great name though. And
well, you know, it's kind of funny because in Miramichi, a lot of people, they just use their name, right? Like, you know, you're going to see Jack or whatever.
Yeah.
So originally, if I think about it, I think Dale said, "Why don't you just use your name?" And I was like, "No. I said, I'm not using my own name for no other reason than we're in this together and, like, you know, we're a group and blah 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 blah."
It's different if it's just you versus you and other people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came up, I think it was me. I said, "Well, why don't we use my first name and your last name?" So my Dale's name is Dale Frost. It was Jack Frost. So I was like, that kind of worked. And then my brother goes, "And Bongo Man." And I looked at him and I said, "How about Bongo Boy?" And that's how it was born. And
you are the older
to this
brother,
day,
so
well, they still call him Bongo. Everybody calls him Bongo, so
Hey,
it's
Bongo.
stuck. And anyway, yeah, so that was Jack Frost and Bongo Boy. So we did that for a while, and then I don't even really know kind of why we stopped, to be honest with you. I don't know. I really don't know. I can't remember.
I think I'm part of that problem because that's when I moved back.
You might be.
And then my wife was like, "Well, you said you played drums, right?" Because I hadn't played since then, right? So I was mentioned to her a couple times I used to play drums back, you know, when I was a kid. And she didn't really put much stock in that because, like, yeah, okay, well, I used to play guitar, and, like, you know, everybody plays guitar, so it's kind of the same thing. So then went to the music shop here in town, and then just bought a cheap drum kit, and then went back to that same because your mom still had that house. So come full circle, our first
we did, because I was still living there at the time, and we started jamming, and
then
and you know, I guess my thing is I had the bandwidth to do both, but this just kind of took off a little bit more, I guess, excuse me. And anyway, that was kind of the foundation for Six Gun Smoke, really.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we did. And then we were in Dirty She for a while because we hooked back up with Aaron and kind of did that for a little bit. And I wrote some songs for that. And I'll credit Aaron again. He was the one that kind of pushed me. He's like, "Why aren't you playing? Why aren't you writing? Why aren't you? And that's, you know, classic Aaron. He'll motivate you in the right way to do what you want to do if you have hesitation.
Yeah.
So we did that, and I learned a lot out of that. And so thank you, Aaron, if you're listening. So I learned a lot out of that.
He's not listening to this.
No, he's not listening to this. And then
especially not now after 40 some minutes.
No, his attention span has gone away. But yeah, no, I mean, you know, so I got a ton of musical influences like John and Matt Bowie and Dale and you and Aaron, and like it just never stopped. Even Kevin, we talked about Kevin Richard earlier. Like, I can still remember taking lessons from Kevin. And actually, I only took lessons. I took one lesson from a friend that my dad had known once, and he taught me Heart of Gold. And then I took lessons from Kevin. Those are the only lessons I've ever taken. And but yeah, I've had like a ton of musical influences, instrument wise and then band wise, and I just kind of take a little bit from all of them, and here we are. But yeah, it basically was Jack Frost, and then to our little startup, which ended up being the Dirty She, and then the DiBiase's kind of simultaneously. And then the logistics of Dirty She was just too hard with the travel and Aaron and Fredericton and us here and all that. And then we just kept going, you and I, with the DiBiase's, and started building a bit of a name, I guess, around town for ourselves, if you would. And then
some heckler in the crowd said, I'll play bass for you. Remember that?
Yes, that's
some guy sitting in the front was like, "Hey, you guys need a bass player? I can do it." And now he's still in the band.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You don't get too many like band invites that actually work out. Like, hey, I'm just going to invite myself in your band, but it was a perfect fit. We love Sean and we got along right away, and we're kind of dumb for not even thinking about it originally to begin with. But
the history was always there, because when we were playing that field party, he was playing in another band, lighting his leather pants on fire. Like, legit. Like, he's a crazy motherfucker. And that's why
we're not even shocked. We're not even
No.
shocked. That's
Yeah.
most people would just call that a Tuesday. That's that's
Yeah.
for us. That's just
Yeah. I'll have to get him on here and have a chat with him about that stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
No.
All right.
Yeah, that's pretty much bringing it around full circle, man.
Well, I think that's a good spot to end
Pretty
this
much
then.
bringing it full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So we'll shut this down, and then So awesome.
Well, thanks for having me. I love these podcasts. I love listening to them, and pretty pumped that you asked me to be on. So thank you very much, sir.
All right, that was my conversation with Jack. Like I said before, we talked for a long time, and this is just a small portion of it, even though probably the longest podcast so far. Just a lot of history between he and I over the years. So I'm going to have more non-drummers on the podcast. So if there's any non-drummers that you'd like me to talk to, or drummers, or whoever you'd like me to have on the podcast, give me a shout. Let me know. Comment, like, all that stuff. I don't usually do the subscribe and like and click the bell. I figure people know how to use YouTube, and if they want to do that, they'll do it. Appreciate the support as always, and hope you all stay safe and take care of each other. If you need help, mental help, reach out. I know that it's not always easy to get the help, particularly with shortages of doctors and all the resources, but don't give up. You're worth it. All right. Love you all. Peace.